guys, Donna here with the Better 2 podcast. Today I have guest Rob Leithliter, and he hosts the Portal and Gateway podcast as well as the Top 20 podcast. Today we have an interesting topic, and I'm not really going to go into discussion. It's going to be more of an organic thing, I think. So, Rob, tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience and why you decided to step up to the podcast.
Okay, well, thanks, Donna, first for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Well, we talked last time when we was on my podcast a little bit about some things. Right now I'm 50 years old. I'm a gay male, a married gay male. And the struggles of that from being an adolescent to now. Mm-hmm. It's a hard struggle. I was 15 I was about 12 years old when I realized I was gay. And I was with men up until I met my first wife. Okay. And that's kind of a weird situation because we was at a bar. I was 15 at a bar. So, but we're talking like the 80s,
My dad and my grandfather used to drag me with them to the bar, and I think the first time I went to a bar I was about 8 years old. So. Oh,
okay. Yeah. Yeah. Same here.
Yeah.
So, and I was there, me and my first wife was actually on a double date.
Okay.
I was there with my boyfriend and she was there with her boyfriend. Okay. And when our dates had went up to go get drinks. Now, mind you, I had no idea at all that she even remotely even felt this way about anything. And when they were gone, me and her was talking and she's like, I love you and I'm going to marry you.
Wow.
And I told her, I says, Darlene, I said, there is no way I'm ever going to marry you. I'm like, I am gay. There's no way. We're here with our boyfriends. There's no way. So, and she just kept repeating it over and over and over. She says, yes. She says, I love you and you're going to be my husband.
How long had you known her before this?
Maybe just like a couple of months.
Okay.
Maybe just a few months.
Okay.
Now, mind you, there's like a whole bunch of situations that we could have gotten in trouble for. 1, 15 in a bar drinking. 2, I was 15, she was 24.
Okay.
So she could have went to jail.
Yeah.
She could have went to jail.
Statutory is works both ways, yes.
Yes, exactly. And so eventually I just gave in to her. And I said, okay, we'll date. Just mainly because of the unconditional love that she had for me. You can't walk away from that. And being in a gay relationship at a young age back in the 80s, and you just had to do something different to try to keep yourself safe.
Right.
So, and when she was talking about, that she loves me and she's going to marry me and she was not going to take no for an answer, I just gave in. I caved in, and I'm like, okay, fine. So we both broke up with our boyfriends that night.
Wow. Okay.
So, I mean, it happened really quick. Okay. I don't waste no time. So
we all have a little bit of those stories. Yes.
Right. Exactly. So me and her started dating. I kept it secret from my parents for a long time, just for the simple fact she was 9 years older than me.
Did your parents already know that you were out, or
they had their idea? Okay. But now that's a funny story. Okay. My mom is number 17 out of 21 children.
Wow.
And my grandmother was Catholic and my grandfather is Baptist. Okay. They was raised in the Bible Belt of Illinois. Okay. So that gives you kind of a little bit, they knew, but they was under the carpet.
Right.
With it. As most parents, I was the baby of the family, baby out of 3 kids. And so they always tried to deter me with it and everything. Mm-hmm. But me being bullheaded and doing what I want to do, I did exactly what I wanted to do. I had my boyfriends and got in some trouble there because, I had one boyfriend that was abusive and stabbed me a couple of times.
Wow.
So, um, but that was before, like my first wife came along.
Mm-hmm.
And just like, another reason why I did it too was to start going out with her is because of the simple fact of how society was. It was, being gay in the 80s, you had your small cliques that would accept you. It wasn't something that was accepted widespread in society yet, as it like it is today. I mean, there's still struggles today, but
Right.
it's not like it was back then. You know, guys were getting killed
Yeah. Yeah.
because of their homosexuality. Um, but anyways, so I decided, okay, I'm going to go with her and see where this goes. All I can say about that is it was a once in a lifetime something special. Okay. We was together from 1985 until she passed away in 2000.
Wow. Okay.
The choice to do that, I will never regret. It was the best years of my life with her. And like I said, it's a once in a lifetime something special.
Yeah.
Now I tried to get married again in a heterosexual relationship. Disaster. Total disaster. It's like I should have known from the day that we got married, because 70% of our wedding guests got food poisoning.
Wow.
And some of them were vegetarians.
Yeah, my first wedding, I had all these precursors that I should have listened to, and I didn't. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you just don't pay attention. It's like when you look back, you're like, oh, damn, I should have saw the signs.
Exactly. And that's how I should have been too. Now I regret getting remarried into another heterosexual relationship. But I don't blame her for the divorce or anything like that, because I was blaming her for not being my first wife. I was angry at her because I wasn't being truthful to myself. I never should have walked that again. So I'm kind of like, I do regret it, but I don't regret it.
Right.
Because it was still a life experience. So I got divorced from her, moved down here to Southern Illinois, and that's where I met my husband. And we've been married for 10 years.
Nice.
So, I mean, and it's like, and even 10 years ago, there was lots of struggles.
Oh, yeah.
Even within the LGBT community. And, we fought hard and we put ourselves right out there. We made like the front page of the newspaper here, and and everything. So I mean, it's not like you can hide in this small little town.
Right.
I mean, you blink and you're on and it's gone. So but the struggles with that, struggles from the 80s, there's lots of similarities, but I don't think it's exactly as harsh nowadays.
Back in 1995, so a while back, I ended up dating a guy that he wasn't aware he was gay yet. There was 7 years between us. I had my husband and I were separated. I went back home and went to UNO, University of New Orleans, and I met this guy. And it turned out, now this is where it sounds really bad, because it turned out when I was in 8th grade, he was in kindergarten at the same school, and I had been queen, and he brought me flowers. So, I mean, that just sounds creepy as all get out. Well, he's like 19 and I'm 26, 27 years old, somewhere in there. And we ended up taking a class. We had a mutual friend that introduced us, and we would go to this place in the French Quarter called Oz, which was a gay bar, and his uncle worked there. And, the first time we're sitting at the bar, it was, I think, right after Thanksgiving. We're sitting at this bar, and this guy walks up to him and goes, I got to have you. And he proceeds to kiss him on the cheek and then lick him. And I just remember sitting there with my mouth hanging open going, and he's like, are you okay? I'm like, I've never had my boyfriend hit on by a guy before. It was really surreal. But you'll appreciate this because of the portals and gateways thing. And we've talked before, and I read cards. So here I am, we have a couple of friends over, and he's like, let's, you read cards for everybody. I'm like, okay, fine. So he's like, can I ask a question, but I don't want to tell anybody. I'm like, well, you have to tell me when I leave.
Right.
Okay, fine. So I read his cards, and I'm like, well, the answer is yes. He's like, okay. So this should be my big clue that this relationship is going to go absolutely nowhere. So he walks me out to the car, and I'm like, so what was the question? He's like, will I ever sleep with a man? Now, mind you, that didn't end the relationship. We didn't break up then. He gave me roses for Valentine's Day. It was still, but that should have been the big tip off. And because of Facebook, you eventually run across people, and I ran across him, and he's now married to a man. So wow. I'm like, ultimately that's where he needed to be. He was young. He hadn't come out yet. He didn't know. And he would go to we would go to Oz all the time to go dancing, but he never put it all together.
Right.
So, it was not as easy back then. His parents were very religious.
Right. See, and that's how it was kind of like with me when I was growing up is, they were always like, oh, well, don't worry about it. You'll end up liking girls and, you'll find a nice one to date and marry and all that stuff. And I used to have my boyfriend spend the night all the time. And my mom and dad knew about it. But it was that suppression, that society suppression. And especially when it comes in from like your family unit, mm-hmm. your close family unit, it's even harder. Yeah. And the struggles with all that is that when I was growing up, I was hospitalized maybe 4 or 5 times mm-hmm. for attempted suicide. Wow. And self-mutilation. And it's all because of that non-acceptance. Yeah. It's like different when you have non-acceptance from society. It's different than non-acceptance from your parents.
Oh yeah. Yeah. This doesn't compare to that, but at a certain point when I was in high school, my mom had moved up to Shreveport to learn how to become a truck driver. And I was living with my grandmother at the time, and this girl, I went to a Catholic girls' school, and we're all sitting in the backyard because it was college prep. So we had time to go sit in the backyard and just kill time. Right. And I remember one of these girls that just hung out occasionally with us, and she just looked at me and she's like, if your mother loved you, you'd be with her. And it's nothing compared to what you went through, but that it was kind of like that just stabbed me in the heart because how can somebody be so freaking cruel?
Right. Exactly. And still to this day, I wasn't like hardcore with my relationship with men until after my father passed away, which was about 11 years ago. And my mother still to this day refuses to believe that I'm gay.
Even though you're married?
Even though I'm married. She does not accept my marriage. Because she blames me being gay on being sexually molested when I was 5 by a male member of the family. So she thinks that's why I'm gay and then I'm with a man. I'm like, no, mother, it's not. And I had to explain this to her, that sexuality is determined within the first 3 months of pregnancy. And so that's something that I didn't decide. It was pre-decided mm-hmm. for me when she was pregnant with me. Unless I got like magically popped out of the womb and had all these life experiences, then pop back in. I'm like, ooh, I can't wait. But no, it doesn't happen that way. No. It does not happen that way. It's an actual scientific thing on why, guys are gay or women are lesbian. It's the whole thing, but anyway, she still doesn't accept it to this day. And I'm like, I'm 50 years old. I'm married to a man, legally married, and she still doesn't accept it. My friends have accepted it. My one sister has accepted it, and that's fine. But the non-acceptance still from my mother is still psychological damaging.
Yeah. Abuse is abuse. Even if it's, even if it's not blatant. That's the one thing about psychological abuse that most people don't recognize is it's not something that's blatant. It's
Right.
something that's manipulative that just stays with you. And it's like the smallest thing can trigger it. I
Right,
mean,
exactly. And that's how it is with this, is it's, there's what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought.
sorry.
There's still, and that goes hand in hand with a lot of the LGBT community, is that, they go through all these life experiences like I did. I'm lucky. I made it through it alive,
Yeah.
but most of those people that go through those life experiences with not having their family accept it and trying to live a lie to make it politically correct for society, depression, suicide attempts, heavy drug use, all that goes into that. And it all stems from the non-acceptance, I think.
Right. I mean, it's got to kill your self-esteem. It's got to kill, it hurts you at your core because the one thing you want from your parents is to be loved and accepted. You want to make them
Right.
proud.
Right, exactly. And I was thankful enough that when I made that choice at such a young age of being 15, which most 15s don't have their heads screwed on straight to begin with, it's, I was lucky enough to have a woman by my side that was strong enough to support that lack of self-esteem, the confidence, the unconditional love. And she made me a better person.
Yeah.
Because of it, where my family lacked, she picked up.
Yeah.
So in that aspect, no regrets, none whatsoever.
Well,
None.
and that is the, dare I say, worth the price of admission. When you find somebody that loves you unconditionally and they teach you how to be a better person, they teach you how to be okay. I mean,
Right.
my
Exactly.
dad is notorious for missing my birthday. He was always notorious for missing it. And what's really sad is my half sister was born 5 days after my birthday.
Oh, wow.
So after my 12th birthday. But besides that, when I got with my husband, who just passed, well, not just passed, but passed last summer, there was a birthday, and he knew that my dad was a total shit about it. So I had gotten up one time to go to the bathroom. It was on my birthday, and he grabbed my cell phone and dialed my dad and hung up.
Oh, geez.
He hung up. And so I come back from the bathroom and we're watching TV and my phone rings and it's my dad. And I'm like, oh, okay. My dad's calling me for my birthday. And my dad's like, you called? And I'm like, no, I didn't. And John's like, yeah, I did. Because he needed to, and he said it loud enough for my dad to hear. He's like,
wow.
He needed to know it was your birthday. And I'm like, yeah, he called because it was my birthday. My dad's like, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot. I'm like, yeah, right. But anyway, what I'm getting at is there's some, when your partner, your spouse, thinks of those little things and knows that they mean something and values you.
Right.
Those things boost your self-esteem. Those things make you feel better about yourself. And you understand then what it's like to love somebody unconditionally. I was talking in a chat the other day that we were talking about weight and looks and everything and about how women have to go through all this. At a certain point in my marriage, my husband was legally blind, so he couldn't see me. So it didn't matter how I looked. He loved me for me. And yes, there was a lot of difficulty with health-wise and issues, but he loved me, and I was willing to go that mile because he loved me.
Right.
So,
right. And that's another thing too, since we're touching on that with like your self-appearance and everything. Even though I had like that really awesome relationship with my first wife, and I decided to roll the dice and try again. During that 10-year marriage with my second wife, it was like a lot of self-abuse because I wasn't being honest with myself, truthful with myself, and trying to fit into what society said I should fit into.
Yeah.
I went from like 220 something pounds to 560 pounds.
Wow.
During that 10 years.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, even though you've got that that strength back from something very positive, it can be very easily knocked down.
Oh yeah.
And that's why it's important that people from that community understand that, you know. And it's, if you get that moment to where you get that unconditional love, even though it's not from your same sex, it's still important to do it because you're not going to regret it.
Right. Right. I mean, when I met my husband, he was sick. He already was sick. He had some health issues, and he told me, he's like, nah, you don't want to be with me. I'm going to die. Okay, guess what? Everybody's going to die. And he's like, well, I'm going to die. I'm going to die soon. And I'm like, but if you don't, he's like, but I'm going to die soon. I'm like, you know what? It's better to love you and lose you than never to have loved you at all, which goes back to the statement of better too.
Right.
But, you know, ultimately on the other side, I'm going into at the end of the month, it'll be 10 months. I don't regret my decision for loving him because he made me
Right.
a better person. And
Right.
I think that's, if you can come out of a marriage and say that, you know, my first marriage, I got to experience being a stepmom. I got to experience being a mom. That's about the positive I can say about that marriage.
Right.
I can't say a lot of other good things about that marriage. But the fact is, if you can walk away from your marriage, even if it was a bad marriage, and still find something good, and that's the thing, even with the worst situation, if you can find something good out of it, that's the important takeaway.
Right, exactly. And it doesn't matter if it is a straight marriage or a gay marriage or whatever, the dynamics of the marriage is the same.
Right.
You know, I mean, you still have all those marital struggles, not being able to, you know, even though you have those times where you don't want to support your spouse, you do because it's the right thing to do, regardless of what kind of relationship it is, or regardless of what kind of marriage, if it's, you know, interracial mix, gay, straight, whatever. And that's what I took from that marriage, is that unconditional love is unconditional love.
Yeah.
And regardless of the age difference in between me and her, even though it was only 9 years, there was still, you know, she had already had life experiences. She had a 2-year-old daughter, you know, and she was in a bad marriage herself, even though she had a boyfriend, you know.
Yeah.
Whoops. You know, but I mean, she was in a bad marriage herself.
Mm-hmm.
But still, she was able to find that strength to build me back up, to be accepting of myself and to be confident enough in myself to do what I've done with her for all those years and to be happy, you know. And society still today, in some parts, like where I live at now, is you get like these little groups that are okay with gay marriages and gay relationships and people of the LGBT community. But then you've got a vast larger society down here that is not okay with it. And it's because I'm in the Bible Belt.
Right. I mean, I grew up in New Orleans, so, you know, we didn't necessarily have Pride Parade, but I mean, I remember going down to the French Quarter for Mardi Gras and seeing the big drag shows that they had in the quarter for Mardi Gras, and they were phenomenal.
Right.
So, I mean, growing up where I grew up, I was more exposed to that type of stuff. And going to my aunt's house in Tampa, same thing. It was accepted there. It wasn't so, it was more, you know, it's accepted. Okay, a guy loves a guy, a girl loves a girl, whatever. It's okay. But even even that being said, though, there's still some clusters, even in the bigger cities, where they're just as narrow-minded as being in a small town.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And the truth is, love is love. Whether you love some people love their dog, some people love their cat, some people love their best friend. What is wrong with any of that? You know?
Right, exactly. And nowadays, more so than what it was back in the 80s, is a lot of two-face going on with it. People will be like, oh, we're okay with you being gay and, you know, we accept you. But then there's all these underlying conditions that goes along with it. You can't do, you know, PDA. You can't hold each other's hands. You can't kiss. You know, we don't want you guys being lovey-dovey around us in the house. And, well, then that's not acceptance.
No.
That is acceptance with conditions.
Right. And that's not
And
acceptance, it's judgment.
right, exactly. And then, that breaks down that person or that couple because of the non-acceptance. The just the whole chemical makeup of it is wrong. And then those people can get, depressed. They can, self-esteem is gone again and everything. And so I just distant myself from those kind of people. Because after everything that I've been through and went through high school, I had friends that would back me up and literally protect me during my high school years. And I never knew that until recently.
Wow.
That they would confront these other people, these other guys in school, and fight them.
Wow.
Because they wanted to do harm to me.
Yeah.
And thankfully those friends that I had was smart enough not to say nothing to me, because I probably never would have completed high school.
Yeah,
I would have been bullied right out.
That would have scared, I'm sure it would have scared you off, because
yes, exactly.
How do you, it's hard enough being in high school. How do you go to high school and have a target on your back? And that being said, nowadays, you and I, we didn't have the internet.
Right,
for high
exactly.
School. Nowadays, I mean, I saw some guy posted that somebody got fat shamed on TikTok and tried to commit suicide. I mean, why do you have to be such a bully? Why do people have to be so
right?
Why can't they be accepting?
Right, exactly. Well, I found out that people have a tendency to bully more because they can't accept that same situation within themselves.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a way for them to act out and a way for them to get rid of that anger, that unknowing.
There was something that always bothered me about my ex-husband, and I most likely should not be saying this, but anyway. I was young when I married him, and I questioned whether he ever pleasured himself. And he said that no, because that was woman's work. And I thought
every guy does that. Every guy does that. I don't care.
I'm like, are you telling me? I said, no, I've never done it. I said, really? You've never touched? No, that's woman's work. And I thought to myself, okay, so either you have some, because he was really homophobic. So part of me wonders if underlying there wasn't some kind of, temptation there for him, that he was so adamant about that.
Right. Well, now I have found that, and this is more so with guys than what it is with the females.
Mm-hmm.
The guys are more likely to experiment in a gay relationship than what a woman is. And I don't know, maybe if that's just how society sees it or not, but women are more affectionate as a rule anyways.
Yeah.
And so guys, they do it in behind closed doors, experiment with these gay relationships.
Well, think about it though. Go ahead.
And it's like, that's what guys do. Mm-hmm. They like to experiment. Well, what is all this about? I've heard that a guy knows what a guy likes, so they go and try it.
Well, that was another thing that, speaking of certain things, and most likely I'm being too candid here, but, he was fascinated with the back door. And I'm like, so let me ask, I asked him, I said, so what is different between you doing that to me and you doing that to a guy? And his response was, you're built different.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, if I can get into like detail about that.
Go ahead.
It is. Now I've noticed the difference, like from my first marriage. Mm-hmm. Just the difference between a sexual relationship in a heterosexual or in a gay marriage. If it's a guy, the orgasms feel different than from a woman to a male, because the whole muscle buildup is and everything. It's different. It's way different, and that's why men experiment with it. Is because it's more pleasurable than what it is in a heterosexual relationship. Okay. just because of like how everything feels, without going into like gross detail.
I completely understand. I completely understand with you. I guess my point when I was questioning the ex was, are you so curious? Because I really did think he was homophobic. And to me, it was just, you really want to do this because of, you want to experiment, but because I just, between not touching himself and that, it was just kind of like, dude, something just doesn't add up.
Right. And we used to call that bi-curious.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s and 90s, that was bi-curious. But now I think they have a whole different terminology for it. They label it different. I don't know. There's like 10 different sexualities nowadays.
Well, the interesting thing about me and the ex now, when I look back, it's like, I don't know how I was married to him, because he's a born again Christian. And
that could be another reason. That right there can be another reason why he might have been that way, is because of the upbringing.
Well, his mom and dad were not religious at all.
No,
they weren't. And I mean, it was never about religion. That's why it kind of threw me for a loop when I found out, as an older person, he's become a born again Christian. He loves his guns. He's born again Christian, and it's all good.
Right. See, and that's another thing too, is that when I was growing up, a lot of people in my family was like, well, this isn't, how the Bible teaches and everything like that there. But when I got up older and became an assistant pastor at my church during my first marriage, I got to know the Bible pretty good. Mm-hmm. And, they don't accept gay people. And if they do accept gay people, you can't act on it. You have to be single. And I can't remember exactly the book or the verse, but I do remember reading it, to where Jesus told one of his disciples to go lay with the man as he would his woman, as he would his wife. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
That there's been gay the whole entire time. And it's just, I think too many people in society, they're hypersensitive about things. And it's not, to us, we can turn around and say, if we want to be rude about it from the LGBT community, we can say, oh, well, your heterosexual marriage is not proper or right. But the only thing that we want is full acceptance, and a lot of them, they don't get that like I did it from growing up, so I mean, I know both aspects of it, and a lot of these people are very lucky because they get that acceptance all the way. Now, like my husband's family, he told me that when he came out, his grandmother said, well, it's about time we got one in the family. So, and I mean, and his mother is very accepting, so I've kind of adopted her as my mom, mm-hmm. So I'm getting that acceptance that I never got when I was younger.
And that helps.
Right. And I mean, that has built my confidence up. That has built my self-esteem up even more, and acceptance does a lot, mm-hmm. It really does a lot. And that's why if you do get an opportunity to do something like that, just do it. Go for it. You never know. It's probably going to be the best years of your life.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, sometimes we allow fear to trap us and not take the steps we need to make progress. We look at, oh, well, I'm going to be labeled this. I'm going to be labeled that. I can't do this. I can't do that. For what reason? Who is stopping you? I had a friend who had a dream, and somebody told her something in this dream, and I stick by what the statement was, and it was, there's no memories without the risk. So if you took certain things away from your life, that's why I guess part of the podcast works so well, because how many decisions have you had in life? How many opportunities have you had in life? And you let fear get in your way, and you stopped doing something you should have been doing.
Right. And I mean, it's not only fear, but it's also people allow labels mm-hmm. to define them.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that they have to be the one to define what that label is
Right.
for
I mean,
them.
it's like if you're, and I mean, you said you had a weight issue. It's like if you have a weight issue, they don't, people don't look at you and say, oh, well, you must have a health issue. No, they immediately go, oh, look at you. Excuse my French, fat fuck. You must be lazy. No, there's other issues for why this
Right,
is, I'm
exactly.
this way. But
Exactly.
go ahead.
Because like with me, it's when I got that big, it was because of the depression,
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't being true, because I was allowing the label to define me.
Right.
And that's the thing, is that there's a lot of underlying issues that can make a person be that way. And that's the sad thing about people. Just like you said, people don't understand it. They call, names and without knowing the full story.
I want to ask you a question, and you don't have to answer, but I have to ask you a question since you were talking about basically when you came out and stuff was during the 80s. And were you ever scared of AIDS?
Not until I got much older.
Okay.
When I was about 19, 20, then it started to click. Oh, maybe I need to go do this, go
Yeah.
get tested and whatnot. But I mean, I didn't get tested because of my sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
I got tested for other reasons.
Right.
Because I used to be a very heavy drug user. I've been clean since 88.
Okay.
And that's what I was more afraid of catching AIDS from, was from using needles. Not so much as the sexuality part, but that.
Well, the reason I asked is because they drilled that so much, being on the other side of this, that was such a big push in the 80s that it was all about, the the gay man, he has to deal with this. And it was such a big push about putting it on that community instead of it just being, hey, if you're screwing around, there's a chance. Or if you're, you're using.
Exactly.
So that's why I asked. I mean,
right.
Thank you for responding.
And that's the thing, is that it's, when the AIDS first came out, they said that it was a gay person's disease, just like you said. But then heterosexual people started to come out with it and things. And, going from the old rule, when you sleep with somebody, you are sleeping with the past 10 people that they've slept with.
Yeah.
And who knows what those 10 people had? Because those 10 people, then you have another 10 people. So then you're looking at like 100 or 1,000 people.
Yeah.
That you are potentially sleeping with one person. And who knows what they had?
But no one ever thinks about that. I mean, when you think with COVID, okay, so COVID it has changed everything.
Yes.
Before the intimacy, when and I haven't dated in a long time, but you had the intimacy. Now it's like, okay, so you meet somebody, and I mean, I know you're married, but for me it's kind of like, okay, so what now? Because
right. Well, you know what, from that aspect, I can totally relate, because I've lost a spouse too. Mm-hmm. And I didn't date for that whole entire time that I was with her. I didn't step out or nothing like that. We broke up a couple of times, but breaking up is different than stepping out.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me to get back into the dating game.
Yeah. I mean, when you're with somebody for that long, I mean, for me, it was 17 years, or close to 17. It'll be 17. Our 17th anniversary will be this year. I mean, everything's changed, and I'm not going to go online and date. So it's right. One of those things where it's like, I took a class and I ended up meeting my husband through somebody that was in the class. So if I'm meant to meet somebody, he'll be placed in front of me. I'm not going to go play Let's Go Match.com, because how many people fake that stuff?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. True. So now I met Billy on Plenty of Fish.
Okay.
10 years ago.
Okay.
And luckily enough, that worked, but there is, I mean, sometimes it's just a total train wreck.
Yeah.
When you haven't dated for so long and then you jump back out there, it's a total train wreck. Just like my second marriage, it was a total train wreck. Total train wreck from the word go.
I mean, right now, I'm for me personally, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I miss him, and I'm I'm not ready to start dating, you know? It's one of
Right.
those things where it's like, I'm not going to jump back in until I'm ready.
Right. Right.
So,
See, and I mean, like I said, with my second marriage, I regret it, but I don't regret it,
right.
because I took something positive from my first marriage and it led me to do my second marriage, and I mean, I took certain things away from that marriage,
Yeah.
but I mean, I still struggle with the insecurities because I wasn't being true to myself during that second marriage.
Right.
I never should have done it because I knew in the back of my head that I was not going to get that once in a lifetime special again,
Right.
with the female.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's all self-acceptance too. It's not only from like your family, your friends, society accepting, but it's also yourself.
Right.
Because if you can accept yourself, those others probably should fall into line. I would think.
Before I met my husband, before I started, well, we were friends, but was going to a New Year's Eve party because I was going to go read cards. And he told me later, he's like, when I saw you that night, that was the first time he saw me, and I was dressed up, and he's like, I just thought, wow, she is so beautiful, and she's way out of my league.
Right.
And I mean, for somebody to, and I just looked at him and laughed. I'm like, out of your league? Really? He's like, yeah. I mean, you don't think about those things.
Right. And, and it's, in society as a whole, they don't realize your past with stuff like that.
Right.
And society is like this big, dark, nasty thing pushing you at your back.
Mm-hmm.
Being like, well, this is what you have to do. This is what you have. It's been plenty of time. This is what you have to do. And they just keep pushing.
For me, I hate the word widow.
Yes.
And now it's on my car insurance. I mean, when I divorced, I didn't say I was divorced. I said I was single. Because
right, exactly.
To me, it's like, it's nobody's damn business that I had this. If I get in a relationship, sure, I'll say I was married, but I don't need to be labeled that I was divorced or widowed. Right. I mean, I just
see, and there's those labels again.
Yeah.
It's
if we're willing to change certain labels about sexuality, then I think we should be able to change other labels.
Right. Exactly.
It shouldn't be that way. I need to take a moment to let my dog out because she's barking. So
okay.
I'll be right back.
All right.
So we're back after letting the dog out. But yeah, I mean, labels, I think that as a society, we have too many labels.
Exactly.
Between your sexuality, your marriage, and I understand a lot has to do with, we're trying to chart demographics. We're trying to keep all these statisticians busy and all these, facts. But why does a woman have to be plus size?
Right.
Why can't a woman just be a woman?
Right. Exactly. And, not to like sidetrack or
no, that's fine.
Backwards a little bit.
That's fine.
But, yeah, I just started a new job. Today was my second day.
Okay.
And I found out that one of the people that worked there is one of the ones I worked with at another company, and I actually got him fired for saying derogatory remarks about gay people.
Oh boy.
So on my second day, I had to take my manager into the office and let her know that me and this guy has a past, because I'm not going to let him get away with calling me a fag or calling one of the lesbian women that I work with a dyke or anything like that, because, and that's just wrong. So still at 50 years old in 2021, there's a good possible chance that I can be bullied at work. And I'm not going to do that. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. I mean, I had to stand up and say something to head this off at the pass. Yeah. Because it's not going to happen. I'm not going to accept it. I didn't accept it 3 years ago. I'm not going to accept it now.
No.
Point blank.
And I mean, I'm glad you went back, because that's something that needs to be discussed, because there is that in the workplace still.
Yes, there is. There is. People from the LGBT community, they can still lose their jobs for being gay.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
I mean,
That's
it's wrong.
right. That's like being punished for not loving who society says that you should love.
Right. And I mean, I see all these strides that we've made since I was a teenager, you were a teenager. I see all the strides. But then it's like, there's days where you look at the news and it's like, are we stepping backwards? Are we
Exactly.
going
Exactly.
backwards?
And in that aspect, I think we are.
Yeah.
I think we really are, because now um, married gay couples can no longer adopt a child. They can only adopt a child from certain agencies. That's non-religious. That has that type of diversity.
Hmm.
But that was stripped from us 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And which is kind of sick, because and they say that gay marriages
Whoops, you froze. Hold on.
ruin the same. Well,
You froze.
you
Go
know,
ahead and say that again.
I said they say that gay marriages ruin the sanctity of marriage. Just like our past leader has had how many divorces,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Well,
he's a heterosexual. And I think that, like, if in that aspect, if the bullying wasn't coming from the church, and I know this is a label, but a lot of the priests, they do molest the male members of the church.
yes, they do.
But that's okay. They brush that under the rug. That's perfectly fine. But yet they're the ones pointing the finger, saying, this is wrong. This is not what the Bible says. Being gay is wrong. Well, what do you think it is with the priests and the altar boys?
Right.
Is that not wrong?
Right.
And so, I mean, it's a two-faced label.
Hmm.
They're using a label to hide behind, because they're afraid that if they accept it, then the world's going to explode or something.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Exactly.
But the thing is, for some of these people, they would love the world to end, because then they think they're going to go up to heaven, whatever their idea of heaven is. But
Right.
The fact is, you're believing in the unknown. And while we all believe in the unknown to a certain extent, at what point are you believing in something that may not really, you question maybe my beliefs, because I'll say, maybe let's talk about reincarnation. I'm not really going to go there, but let's talk about reincarnation. And they're going to be like, oh my gosh, reincarnation, no. But how do you know that's real? Have you talked to that boy wrote that book. Oh, wait, you mean the one that his dad actually wrote that really wasn't true?
Right. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I mean, we can all sit, and the thing is, I believe that you can believe whatever you want to believe, but you know what? Don't encroach your religion or your politics on me.
Right. Exactly. I'm right there with you on that. And that's the thing, is that, that there's, in those entities, religion and politics, and as far as the LGBT community, those two entities have protected bullying.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, it's against the law for yourself, for me, to bully somebody or to gay bash. It's a felony now, I think, in Illinois. You can actually go to jail for that.
Wow. Okay.
But then you got the politics and the religion that they're bullying the LGBT community on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And they're using those terms, those slang words and everything, but they got protected bullying.
Yeah.
Which makes it harder for, the younger people that just might be coming out or discovering their sexuality or whatever it may be, and so it makes it harder on them. And people commit suicide over this, and those statistics are actually rising higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
And if they would get rid of that protected bullying and those two entities, that might slow down a little bit, because then they might feel, oh, okay, well, I've got someplace I can go
Right.
and discuss this about without being chastised or bullied, from these people. Because there was a time here not too long ago, just in the past recent years, that they was going to start sending people to conversion camps.
Yeah.
To convert them from being LGBT. Or my favorite one is, oh, let me pray for you. We can pray the gay away.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't think so. Let me throw the religion back at you. Once again, God created man in his own image. Sexuality is determined within the first 3 months of pregnancy. So if you want to get biblical and religious about it, there it is.
I mean, but, back to law real quick, and then I'll go to the next, what I was going to say. There was a law that came out, I think, in Minnesota this week, that if a woman is drunk, the perpetrator cannot be prosecuted for rape.
Yes, and that is stupid. Rape is rape.
Rape is rape. And if she's drunk or not, how do you know? Okay, so let's think about this. Give me the perfect predator. A rapist that puts a roofie in her drink and then she's incapacitated. Now, because she was drinking a Coke, guess what? She's incapacitated, so he can't be prosecuted. Are you kidding me?
Exactly. If she's passed out, she obviously does not have the
faculties,
mentality to say no.
Right.
If she's passed out on the floor, she can't say no.
No. Going back to the adoption thing, once again, it's about love. How many people adopt a kid or foster a kid and the kid is totally treated like shit? How many times? Yeah.
Or murdered.
We had a situation, okay, here in Illinois, AJ Freud, his mom and dad beat him. Then they gave him a scalding shower. He was basically skin and bones. But then they lied and said that somebody came in and stole him. And it turns out that no, they killed him.
Right. Exactly.
But that's okay. I mean, if you really want to get technical, and I know people will scream at me most likely for this, I think there should be some kind of, yes, you can fuck. Yes, you got her pregnant. Great. Okay. And I'm not saying that we should have that's a whole nother topic. But not everybody should be a parent. I'm sorry.
Exactly. Not everybody should be a parent. No.
That's what I'm trying to say, is not everybody should be a parent.
Right. And the thing is that, they took that adoption right and foster right away from the LGBT community. And statistically, those marriages and the love that those same-sex couples give to that child is tremendous and overwhelming. Yeah. Those children actually succeed. Yeah. More in those type of adoptions than they do like in a heterosexual adoption or like a heterosexual foster situation, because those two people want that child so bad, and especially for gay males, because they're not like, like the gay females where they can go get artificially inseminated. Right. Us males don't have that option, unfortunately, but but anyways, those couples have a tendency to love that child, to nurture that child more so than like a heterosexual adoption or a heterosexual foster situation. Yeah. Because most of the time those heterosexual ones, well, I shouldn't say most of the time, but there's a large percentage of it, they're looking at the dollar bank.
That, and they haven't necessarily, not in all cases, but in some cases, they haven't experienced life as hard as someone like you has. So right, exactly. You have a different life experience. So you're going to be more of a champion for the kid as opposed to maybe how a heterosexual person would be. You're going to be more champion to, I remember coming home upset in high school when I transferred schools and we moved to Shreveport and I had no friends, and coming home and crying my eyes out because I got bullied at school. And my mom looking at me going, I have my own problems, shutting her bedroom door and going, you deal with yourself. Right. So my point is, somebody who has been bullied or harassed at school would look at that kid that's coming to them and go, okay, let's talk about it. They're not going to sit there and go, Nope, don't have time.
Right, exactly. There's more of a compassion,
Yeah,
I think, in that kind of a situation, and an unconditional understanding.
yeah. I have to go back to let's go back again. To your first marriage. You said that she had a 2-year-old daughter. So did you get to play stepdad?
Yes, I most certainly did.
And was it everything you thought it would be?
She still calls me dad,
Awesome. Awesome.
and she calls her father by his name. So, I mean, she didn't turn out so nice, because for whatever reason, but I love that. I love being a step parent. It was awesome,
Yeah.
you know. So, and I must have done something right and instilled some type of impression on her for her to still call me dad.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely.
You know,
I got to be a step parent for 4 years. So, I mean, I get it. And for me, the hardest thing about leaving that marriage was leaving the kids.
right,
So,
right,
I mean, and people don't understand that either.
right,
People will look at you and go, well, they're not your kid. So what? If I love them, it goes back to the unconditional love. If I was
right.
willing to love them unconditionally, then who's to say if they were my kids or not? I may not have
Exactly.
given birth, but you know,
Right, exactly. Well, as my dad used to say, it takes more than a sperm donor to be a father.
this is true. This is very true.
you know, and I mean, I mean, I technically didn't become her stepfather until 1994,
Okay.
but me and her mom was together for
Hmm.
all those years before.
Right.
So at 15 years old, 15, 16 years old, I stepped up to a plate and became, a stepfather to her.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe that's what done it. I don't
Maybe.
know. And I mean, maybe that's why me and her had such a close relationship when her mom was alive. Because she was only 17 when her mom passed away.
Yeah.
She's 37 this year now. And I don't talk to her that often, but because she took it really hard after her mom passed away.
Yeah.
And she accepts my marriage now. So in that aspect, she's just like her mother.
Yeah.
Full acceptance, head on. It doesn't matter.
That's a good thing though, because even though you don't have the acceptance from necessarily your mom, you have it from your daughter. You know,
Right.
she will always be, I tell my two stepkids that still, because I mean they're grown, they're in their 30s too, and it's like, no matter what, you're still my kids. You're always going to be
Right.
my kids.
Exactly.
And I don't think, unless you're a step parent and you really, I mean, they're nightmare step parent stories. I mean, my stepfather was not, I would not call him a great stepdad.
Right.
Do I look at some of the good things he did? Yeah, sure. He taught me how to drive. Awesome. He taught me how to fix a car. Awesome. But there's other things that I would be deplored. I'm just totally, I don't even like going there with him.
Right.
So,
Right. So, I mean, there's, and that goes back to what we were talking about, acceptance from your family.
mm-hmm.
That is the strongest acceptance that you can ever have when you're gay,
Mm-hmm.
because you need that acceptance to build up your confidence, to build up your self-esteem, so you can face those ignorant people out in society,
Yeah.
that don't want to accept you. You have to have that foundation of acceptance, according to accept yourself enough to go to society and brush that off your shoulder.
Right. Well, and I mean, being where you were in high school, you coming out into your own knowledge, at least in high school, and even dating, that takes a lot of courage, a lot of support for yourself to be able to do that. And even if your parents aren't supportive, if you have people around you that are supportive, that's what matters. I mean, my stepfather, I wasn't fat. I look back at pictures of me in high school and I go, I wasn't fat. But my stepfather would always call me Miss Pouch because I had a little bit of a gut. And he would even touch and go, Miss Pouch, look at you. Really? And I look back and I go, there's no way I was that fat. But because that mantra sticks in your head, you continue. And I'm sure there are days where shit that your parents said comes back. And
Every solitary day.
yeah. And it's like, okay, enough. I really want to be done with this. But, my mom's been gone 30 years this year, and there's still some of her crap that comes back.
Right.
And you don't, I wish there was just some way, you could take a magnet or the, what was it? Eternal Spotless Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where they do a mind erase. If they could just take some nuggets out like that are detrimental to you, life would be a lot easier.
Yes, it would be. It would be.
But then you wouldn't be who you are.
Right. Exactly. And that's another thing that I don't regret is that I allowed myself to have those experiences, from 15 on.
Yeah.
Because it just made me a better person. It just made my unconditional love even that much more accepting.
So off the topic of what we were, I know the answer to the question is yes, it was better to have. It was better to have come out. It was better to have loved your first wife, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So it was better too. So let's talk about you a little bit now. So you have a podcast, which I was a guest on. Tell us about your podcast.
Okay.
Both of them.
Well, my podcast, I started it in July, and that's the Portals and Gateway. And I worked very hard on it to get it to where it's at today. And, but that's like past experiences. And that's why that came around, this whole podcast. It's for people that has experienced paranormal activity or that know someone close to them that has had paranormal activity. And it's just been an awesome thing to do that. I love it. And then I started my other podcast last month of the Top 20 Countdown. Just music.
Now, is that like a current Top 20 countdown, or is that like you pick a specific year or a month, or?
It goes anywhere from the 50s to current.
Okay.
You never know. I don't even know what my podcast is going to be about until I sit down in front of my computer and pick out my music. Last week, I just done a podcast about awareness, to bring awareness to suicide.
Okay. Because
a year ago, I lost my son to a suicide overdose.
Sorry.
He was only 31. And I'm sure that he was giving out flags of what was going on with him. And that's why I done that one, is because the songs I chose on that one was to make the people around those people realize that this can be a flag. Maybe I need to sit down with them and just talk.
But I have to say something to you, because my first podcast is about my mom's death, and my mom did commit suicide, and she was 41 when she did it. And the thing about it is, after the fact, I went to a group because we had gotten the girls to come live with us at the time, and the group was dealing with the loss of a loved one. And there was this couple there, a mother and father, and they separated the kids from the parent. The parents went into one room and the kids went into another room. And I was in the room with my husband, and this couple was there, and they're like, they're talking about how their daughter had constantly tried to commit suicide over and over and over again, and that ultimately she was on a mission. Right. And while that may seem shocking, when I think back to my own mother, it pretty much is the same way. It's somebody, no matter how much help you want to get them. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't stop and try to help somebody. I'm not saying that at all. So don't,
Exactly.
But for certain people, they're looking for that way out. Life is just too much, and they don't think about the other people that it affects. Because I know it's hard dealing with losing that person.
Exactly.
But you can reach out, but you have to also understand that don't feel guilty if they don't reach back. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel guilty about the choices they make.
Exactly. I mean, the thing is, for like the people that are around the people that are depressed and
Mm-hmm.
trying to check out is if they make it known to that person
Mm-hmm.
that they can come to them
Yeah.
and talk,
Yeah.
even if they're the ones doing all the talking,
Yeah.
and the person that is in that situation is just listening, something that that person says to them can change their whole mindset about suicide.
I agree.
And it can be just a little thing like, it's okay, it'll be better tomorrow. And that's what I was trying to get a point across in that episode of the podcast, is that it doesn't matter, as even if you sit down with them for 2 seconds and say, I love you, things will be better tomorrow, and give them
Mm-hmm.
a hug, that can change the whole outcome of their situation.
It can.
It really can. No matter what they're going through, those few little words can change everything.
I agree with you. And I had that conversation many a times with my mom. So I agree with you 100%. And I just, for me, it's like, maybe because it's been 30 years, I look back at all the time afterwards that I grieved for her loss.
Right.
And looking back, it's like, ultimately it was her choice and I could not have done anything. I saved her once and I couldn't save her again. Even
Right.
though I talked her out of it several times, ultimately I couldn't save her.
Right. Right.
So,
And it's hard to separate yourself from that and not to blame yourself
right,
for that.
right,
And
exactly.
that's the thing. And that's the thing, because that can start like a whole vicious cycle,
Mm-hmm.
for that person that's blaming themselves, because then they're going to get into that situation.
Yeah.
And then it's just going to snowball from there.
Well, my therapist at the time, right after my mom did it, I brought my grandmother to therapy with me because my grandmother, it hit her really hard. This was her only daughter. And I've had other therapists that were shocked by what this guy told me. He's like, well, you and your grandmother now are more predisposed. Okay, this is the first time I'm seeing you after my mom's done this, and this is what your
Right.
first piece of out of your mouth is. Um, but to me, I don't think I am predisposed because I'm too hell bent on surviving. You
Right.
know, I do look at, there's always a new day dawning. You know,
Right.
there's always, it could be crap today, but tomorrow might be better.
Right. See, now, like with me, with my son, when he passed away a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
and did the suicidal overdose of heroin or whatever he was using, they found him with a needle in his arm.
Yeah.
That's how he got found. But I went through a very deep and dark period at that time,
Mm-hmm.
because he was my only son
Yeah.
and so young, and I went through a very, very bad depression. I dropped a lot of weight during that time. I went from 220 down to 180 in a matter of weeks.
Wow.
And so it was like almost I gave up.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of blaming myself because I wasn't there. And,
Yeah.
so I mean, it is a vicious cycle. And it's hard for the people, like you said, around the ones that do commit suicide and
Yeah.
succeed.
Well, even okay, so let's back step a little bit. Even for the people that don't succeed, I mean, being around my mom for a lengthy period of time, there was a lot of emotional abuse to her suicide attempts, and she would constantly talk about doing it. She would, the worst of it, and I talked about this on my podcast earlier. The worst of it was when she called me a whole month straight telling me how she was going to do it. She was going to kill herself. She was going to kill herself. And, she's in Texas, or I'm in Texas. She's in Louisiana. I call my stepfather. I'm like, when she gets up to Indiana, because she was supposed to move at the end of the month, you need to get her help. You need to. So he knows this. He didn't take the gun out the house, but this is beside the point. So she's calling me every day and she misses a day or two, which scares the bejesus out of me. And then she proceeds to call me one day and says, I need you to come back home. I'm like, why? Because I need you to find me. Excuse me? I need you to find me in the shower. You need to find what do you mean? I'm going to shoot myself in the shower in the head And that way there won't be that much mess. Now think about that.
Oh,
Think about that rational thought. There's a lot of abuse attached to that, because
yeah.
if you really loved me, how would you want me to see such a horrific thing?
Yes, exactly.
And, say what you want about me. You can say I'm an awful person, but my response to her was, if you loved me, you wouldn't ask me to do that. Because after a month of dealing with this, of I'm going to kill myself, what do? I couldn't call and say, because I had a friend who she seemed way out there. And this happened a couple of years back. I called the police. And had them go out and do a wellness check on her. And she told them, oh, I'm fine. And I guarantee if the cops would have showed up at my mom's house, because she conned the psychs when she tried to commit suicide, ended up in a coma for 3 days. She went to the psych ward. And guess what? She just convinced them that she was just burned out. So I couldn't have called the cops, because she would have convinced them she was fine.
Right, so, exactly.
If you're dealing with somebody that is suicidal, that is consistent, and you can't get them help, don't be so hard on yourself. That's, because there's a certain level of, you can rescue them. It's the whole oxygen mask thing on the airplane.
Right.
You have to take care of you in order to take care of them. And if they're going to drag you down, and you naturally go into that psychological abuse yourself. And then if they do it, you feel guilty, because how did I not save them?
Exactly. See, and that's like it is with my mom. She uses that as a threat, as a way to control.
Yep.
I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself. And that does so much psychological damage to the other person that's listening to it. Mm-hmm. Especially if you already know that it's a tool that they're using to control.
Yeah.
And, that's a form of abuse.
It is.
And unfortunately, I've had to stop talking to my mom, because I can't do that no more. I can't.
I understand completely. I do. I understand, because it is an abuse. It's constant psychological abuse, and you don't realize it when you're, depending on what your age you are. For me, when I was 16 years old and she tried to commit it, and I called the paramedics, and she's like, well, I'm never going to forgive you. Okay, fine. Don't forgive me. I don't care. She told everybody my stepfather saved her, but her mind needed that, because he was such a POS that her mind needed that. She couldn't relate that her daughter actually saved her. But she would constantly, that aside, when I look back at her, she would sit there when she couldn't control me. She's like, well, I'm going to send you to live with your dad. I'm going to send you to live with your father. Okay. And I didn't want to do that, because, and then when it wasn't that, it was, one day you're going to fall flat on your face, and I hope I'm there to see it. But then out of her mouth, the next minute is, you can do anything you put your mind to.
Yeah, see, that's the kind of situation I was raised in, because, like I said, I went through that self-mutilation period, and that suicide attempt period, when all this self-discovery and stuff was happening. That's when my mom started saying that she was going to kill herself, and all this stuff. What does that do to a 15-year-old child that is going through puberty and self-expression, self-discovery, and then dealing with society bullying, and then you have a parent saying something like that to you? It's no wonder I done drugs.
Oh, well, I'm lucky. I'm lucky I didn't, because my mom, after I saved her, because I had to kind of step in the role to take care of my stepbrother and make sure the house was okay and everything. My mother accused me of sleeping with my stepfather. I couldn't stand my stepfather. I hated my stepfather. I was not attracted to him in any way, shape, or form. But I can't tell you how many times she started that bullshit. Oh, well, you and your stepfather. No. I mean, but once again, at a young age, how do you deal with that?
Exactly.
How do you deal with somebody that is, dare I say, looking back now, most likely she was bipolar. And there's nothing wrong with people that are bipolar if they're treated. She was not treated.
I'm a bipolar.
Right. And I mean, we talked about that before, and it's like I know people that are bipolar that function.
Yeah.
She just she was so happy she conned everybody. It's like I laugh because when my parents got divorced, she made sure I got a therapist. But guess what? She never got therapy.
Ugh,
So
it was like almost you going and getting a placebo
yeah,
at
well,
that point.
there was a time when right after when I was in college, I was expressing myself and I was wearing hot pants and big hats. It was the 80s. I was going for my thing in heels and she tells me, she's like, "You're crazy." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I wanted to be in a band. I was a musician, I'm going for a look." And so she's like, "You need to go to the mental health hospital down in Shreveport and you need to get checked out."
Right.
Fine. Is it going to get you to shut up? Yes.
Right.
So I go in there with my hat and everything and get evaluated. And I'm sitting there going, what if she's right? What if she's freaking right? Guy comes over to me and looks at me and goes, "Why are you here?" I said, "Because my mom thinks I'm crazy." He goes, "You're not crazy. You're sane." He's like, "You're very creative, highly creative. And if you don't get the hell away from your mother, she's going to kill you. Your mother's not creative at all.
Right.
So get as far away from her as possible."
Yep.
And so wait, I go back home and I'm like, she goes, "So what did they say?" I'm like, "They said I'm sane and they say that I'm creative and that you're not." "Well, they don't know what they're talking about." Okay.
Right. Right. So, I mean, and once again, it's society.
Yeah.
Labels from society.
Yeah. Yeah. Because what is, people say that if you're looking at the metaphysical stuff, some of it is crazy and
Right.
it's just unexplained. Things happen and you can't explain it.
Right.
And that's,
in a kind of way that I'm lucky that my mother done what she's done through all those years of me growing up, because I feel that it's made me a stronger person.
yeah. Oh,
a more
definitely.
rational person.
Yeah. The thing is, the trauma and the abuse that we experience from our families, whether it be our friends, it's made us who we are. It makes us look at people differently. It gives us a backbone. It gives
Right.
us ownership of who we are. And we can recognize the people that are not going to be good for us much easier.
Yes. Yes, it does. It does. Because then we're able to lift that veil off those people.
Yeah.
It's like almost having a third eye or
Yeah.
a sixth sense that you
Yeah.
can actually look at somebody like, yeah, I need to stay the hell away from them and run quick.
Yeah.
So, I'm
ahead.
thankful. I'm thankful that I went through what I went through with my mother in that aspect, because now I know.
Well, and I think ultimately between dealing with your mother and your experience in your marriages and stuff, I think you've come to accept yourself a lot more too, haven't you?
Oh, tremendously a lot more. Tremendously a lot more. I mean, the confidence that all that gave me is like overwhelming now.
So, since it's such a small town and everything, do you plan on staying there? Have you got a good group of friends now that accept you and
I've actually got plans to possibly run for mayor of this town.
Nice.
Possibly. I don't know. I'm 50 years old. I may not have the energy.
Well, it would take a lot, and then there's a lot of the bureaucratic BS that goes along with it. So you have to be willing to.
Yes, exactly.
I used to be in claims and I was a supervisor, and my husband was always like, "You could have your boss's office."
Don't want it. 4 years ago, speaking of that, and being in a small town and being a married gay male, the town that me and my husband used to live in Ziegler, Illinois, really tiny town. There's like 1,000 people in that town. I was actually like the first person here in Southern Illinois to be a married gay politician to be on the ballot.
Wow. Congratulations.
Down here. I didn't follow through with it because there's other opportunities that came around and I had to drop from the race. But even though I dropped, people were still writing my name in. So like even in that little small town, the acceptance was good,
Yeah.
you know? So that's what's leading me to think, maybe I'll try this again since I have more time to devote to it now, and I'm not working like other campaigns or presidential campaigns or whatever. But it's so now I got more time to do that for myself and to maybe change the status quo in the Bible Belt.
Well, and that, changes in the air. You
Right.
just, you just have to be willing to fight for it.
Right.
And
I mean, I fought for same-sex marriages here in Illinois. And so I'm not afraid to fight.
yeah,
I'm not afraid to get out there and change people's mindset about things because I'm like this annoying little Girl Scout cookie selling girl that will knock on your door every day. Do you want to buy some cookies? Do you want to buy some cookies? That's exactly what I'm like. I'm going to be knocking on your door.
but if that works, I have a older gay couple that live across the street from me, and when they legalize marriage, I'm like, are you guys going to get married? And the younger of the two is like, I wouldn't mind, but the older guy's like, nope, not going to do it. I'm like, okay. All right, it would be
Oh,
better for Gene if you did, because benefits. Nope, not going to do it. Okay.
right,
So,
exactly. So I mean, it's like you said, change is definitely in the air,
hmm
and even though that there's been a lot of acceptance and a lot of okay, well, this is kind of cool, there's still that one part that's like, no.
well, I don't want to talk about politics, but I have to say, I think what hurt is going back to the Stone Age for 4 years. That hurt.
I
That hurt
agree.
a lot
It
in a
did.
lot of ways.
It did. It did. It really did. And especially for the LGBT community,
hmm
now we have to start the fight over
Yeah.
and try to get that resolved again. And that's something else I want to touch on too, is that people think that when the LGBT community is involved in a civil rights or an equality thing, that's just about that group of people. It's not.
No.
Because the other civil rights, women's rights, and all this other stuff with equality, it's all a package deal.
Right.
We're just an element of that law.
Right.
So when we fight for ourselves, we're fighting for everybody else too, to make sure that they get the same equal rights,
Right.
the same recognition, the same ability to do what we're fighting to do, and that's where people get mistaken, is that they think it's just because it's LGBT leading the game that it's going to leave everybody else out. It don't.
No.
Because if we move forward, you're going to move forward.
Right. And that's, if we looked at trying to better society all the way around and try to get rid of bigotry and hatred and racism and homophobia and all these labels, if we could at least get half of them cut down, we would be a
Right.
much more peaceful society.
Right. There should be one label and one label only:
Person?
the human race.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
The human race.
your skin color doesn't matter. I mean, it's funny because, looking back, my dad, he and I do not agree on politics. And I thought about taking a DNA test because if I Google my last name, there's not a lot of Caucasian people that come up with my last name. So I've really, because I know my dad can be slightly, I'm pretty sure he's slightly racist. I would love to have a DNA test, and I would love to just go, hey, Dad, check this out. Because I'm sure somehow that this is,
Right.
this is something that is true, and I'm fine with it. But yeah, I mean, at one point in my life, after my parents split, I was the only white kid in the neighborhood, and I was fine with that. But my mom moved us out of that neighborhood as soon as my grandfather died. We had to move out of that neighborhood. I'm like, I had friends. I used to play stickball. I used to play, nope.
Right.
And I don't understand that. I really don't. It boggles my mind how, and at the time, when you're 9, 10 years old, you don't see it as the racism that it truly is. As an
Right,
adult,
exactly.
I look back and go, damn. And I realized if she would have been alive in the last 4 years, I wouldn't have been talking to her. Because I'm sorry, as I used to say whenever I saw a bumper sticker for certain people, oh, I'm sorry, your racism is showing.
Right,
Because
exactly.
that's what it was.
Right. See, and that's something I don't put up with either. If I see it out in public, I would be like that little Girl Scout cookies selling girl. I'm going to be right up in their face and I'm going to say something because that doesn't fly.
No.
That does not fly with me at all. Not one bit.
No. And I mean, that's the unfortunate thing. It's like we have such structured norms that people feel that, oh, well, you know, this person can't marry this person because their sex, they can't marry because their color. What year are we in? All that stuff was taken away, you know? So I don't know.
It was. It definitely was. Well, like today at work, I had, you know, a black customer and a white customer. They both were in line at the same time, but there was two lines.
Mm-hmm.
And just so happened to be the black customer was in my line. So I called them up to my register. That white customer gave me such a nasty look. Like they should have been picked over that other customer. Sorry, you're the one that chose that line. Go ahead and sit in with your sucky life choice. You know, go ahead.
As the knight said in Indiana Jones, you've chosen poorly.
Exactly. You know, and I don't care. Let that white person be mad.
Yeah.
Because I chose the person that was next in line compared to them because of their skin color.
Yeah.
Sorry. You know, and this person looked like there was a type of person that probably would have spends like 3 or 4 hours a day in a tanning bed anyways. Well, come to my line again and I'll choose a white person over you because your skin's darker. I'm like, come on, bring it on. Bring it on. I'm ready. I fight for anything. Anything that I feel is wrong, I will fight for it.
I mean, it's amazing when people will overstep and say something that they shouldn't. And I'm not talking about what you're saying. I'm talking about I went to stop and get gas and I had a handicap placard hanging from my mirror. And you know, you're not supposed to have that. But how many people drive with that hanging from their mirror? Almost everybody.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I mean, so I was maybe going a whole mile. So I stopped to get gas and I was going to go pick up my husband. And this woman comes all the way from another side of the gas station to get in my face and proceed to tell me that you're not supposed to drive with that thing. So, excuse me, you're not supposed to have that placard up when you're driving. I said, get back in your car. And she just looked at me and I'm like, get back in your fucking car now.
Right. Yeah.
And she just looked at me and I'm like, now. And she's like, okay, that's none of your damn business.
Right. Exactly.
And I mean, that's part of the problem. When we have these people that feel entitled to step over and police people that they have no business policing.
Right. Exactly. It ain't going to be their ticket. It's not going to be their moving violation.
Right.
So why should they care?
Right. I mean, how many police officers drive with a cell phone?
Or playing on their little laptops as they're driving down the road.
Actually, I had my old landlord got rear-ended because the cop was running her plates, and she had stopped at a stoplight, and he was too busy checking her plates, and he submarined underneath her. Yeah.
But I bet you that's going to go bye-bye.
Probably. I don't know what happened. I mean, she ended up, the statute ran and everything. It was a long time ago, but she ended up hurting her. She was hurt pretty bad.
Oh, jeez.
Because he was doing pretty good clip of speed, and he hit his brakes and he went right under. So,
oh, jeez.
But yeah, I mean, I think that we just, as a society, we need to try not to. I don't want to say there's a time to police and there's a time not to police people.
Right.
And if we would get out of our way with the labels and look at everybody equally, I think we would be in a much better place.
Exactly. I agree. I totally agree.
And I know this is different than what you expected from this podcast, but so where can they find your podcast at?
They can find it on Anchor.fm. They can find it on Spotify, Google, Alexa.
Okay. So I thank you for joining me. It's been an interesting conversation.
Yes. Well, we had a good first conversation, so I had no doubt about this one.
I didn't either. Thank you, and we will talk again.
Okay.